The history of gold discovery in Victoria has for many years held our interest. So, when friends of ours suggested we both take a trip through the historical Goldfields area in central Victoria, we jumped at the idea. We chose Daylesford as our base, as our friend Margaret has spent her early years there. From Melbourne, we began our Goldfields tour at the Steglitz historical area in the Brisbane Ranges National Park. Neither our friends Margaret and Gary or Anne and I had been to Steglitz, and as it was a perfect day, we took a stroll and investigated the few remaining buildings. The well-maintained courthouse, now a museum, was opened in 1875 when Steglitz was a flourishing gold town. Charles and Robert von Steglitz were the first European settlers in the area in 1842. 10 years later, gold was discovered and the population eventually grew to 2,500. Mr. Sugg, the blacksmith, resided at this timber cottage and operated as a smithy until 1944. By then, all the mines had closed and the population had drifted away. There are signs in the main street of when the town was once on the Cobb & Co run, and also of later modes of transport. At one time there were more than 300 buildings in the town. Scott's Hotel, built in the 1890s, is now a private residence. St Paul's Anglican Church was consecrated in 1871 and continued to operate until 1962. We could have stayed longer as there are plenty of walks in the area, but we had booked a ride on the Daylesford Spa Country Railway. Daylesford was first known as Jim Crow or Wombat when it was occupied by Captain John Hepburn in 1838. The discovery of gold in 1851 led to a gold rush that attracted many Swiss Italians and Chinese. Interest in the natural mineral water springs developed during the 1860s and continues to attract many tourists today. For years, Daylesford has been a popular holiday destination, including those weekend getaways, as it is less than 2 hours' drive from Melbourne. As it was Sunday, the market at the station was in full swing. Originally, the rail line was run by Victorian Railways, linking up with the main Bendigo to Melbourne line, until it was closed in 1978. It is now a volunteer-operated tourist railway that runs services between Daylesford and the hamlet of Ballarat. The railway has several diesel rail motors at different stages of restoration. Ours was a diesel-electric rail motor built in 1930. Gary had a go at being a porter. In the early days, commuters would give their luggage to the porters to store in the luggage van. The 10-kilometre line passes through Central Highlands Forest to the highest operating railway station in Victoria. In 1990, services commenced between Daylesford and the nearby hamlet of Musk. Another section was opened in 1997, allowing services to operate as far as Ballarat. In 2009, bushfires in the Daylesford area destroyed 1.6 kilometres of track running through the Wombat State Forest. It was not until December 2013 that the line was finally reopened through to Ballarat. After our train ride, Margaret, who had spent the first 8 years of her life in Daylesford, went looking for the final resting place of her paternal great-great-grandparents. Using information she had gathered, we soon found the shared grave. Another family connection was completely by coincidence, as we found that the cottage we had hired was the same one that her aunt had once lived in. The next day we headed out for a drive, first to see a feature called the Blowhole. After finding ourselves out in the back blocks, we eventually got back on track and found a landmark that was on the map. And there it was, a sign to the Blowhole, just an easy 30-minute walk away. The track actually was not that easy, what with its uphill and down dale and following the side of a hill. You can imagine how unimpressed everyone was when we reached the Blowhole and found that there was a car park there, especially when we knew we had to walk back. And there was only a trickle of water at the Blowhole. As alluvial gold became harder to find, diverting water courses was one method used by the miners. The tunnel diverts the flow from Sailors Creek, exposing a large section of the creek bed, which was mined. To try to make it up to our friends, we decided to go to Wombat Hill for lunch and a wander around the gardens. Wombat Hill is actually an extinct volcano. Before being established as a gardens, it was used to graze and exercise police horses. Now, well over 150 years old, the gardens have some fine examples of large mature trees. From the Pioneer Tower, there are glimpses of Daylesford and views overlooking the gardens. Margaret took our word for it. Another area worth visiting is down by the lake and boathouse. Also in the area are springs where the mineral waters can be sampled. Upon arriving at Chewton, we called into the 143-year-old post office to pick up our information guide on the town. Chewton is just 5 or 6 kilometres southeast of its big brother Castlemaine. Gold was discovered here in 1851, and the gold rush town grew before the authorities could lay out a neat grid plan for the settlement. Chewton and the Mount Alexander diggings were proved to be one of the state's richest gold mining localities and one of the most enduring. As well as its well-preserved historic buildings, it does have its quirky side. The statue sitting on a fence is of Francis White, who in 1948 escaped death when a disused gold mine shaft caved in. Francis grabbed a tree branch to save herself. This was all very interesting, but the reason why Gary and I had really come to Chewton was to see Rod Hadfield's collection of hot rods. Rod's extensive museum is situated on a large property at the east end of town. When it comes to hot rodding in Australia, or the world for that matter, Rod is a legend. There seems to be nothing that Rod and his team can't build once the ideas have been put into motion, and the quality is second to none. One such example is the Warman Special that was inspired by a small tin model of a 1930s open-wheeler race car that his grandfather had made. Named in honour of his grandfather, the Warman is powered by a 27-litre Rolls-Royce V12 Meteor tank engine. And what would Henry Ford have thought seeing his T-model powered by a Boss K29 V8 engine with two massive superchargers? But on the other hand, Rod could restore one back to original condition. Rod's massive haul of trophies is only equalled by his collection of sarsaparilla and root beer bottles and cans. North of Chewton, and just east of the town of Harcourt, is the predominant landform of Mount Alexander. Mount Alexander is known for its granite, which has earned a reputation as a first-rate building stone. The stone is used on the granite cairn built in 1876, which marks the summit and serves as a trig point. The Forest Creek gold working site is part of the Mount Alexander Goldfields and is situated between Castlemaine and Chewton. Hydraulic sluicing was the method used to obtain gold from the gravel of an ancient riverbed of the Forest Creek. A pumping station supplied water under high pressure to a sluicing gun. The operator aimed the stream of water at the cliffs of gravel, washing it into the sluicing paddock, ready for the miners to process. Many relics of the era can be found on the site, including this manually operated cement mixer, aptly demonstrated by Gary. We then headed to Friarstown, passing the beautifully restored and maintained Duke of Cornwall Mine engine house. The mine was opened in 1869, when the production of gold in the area was booming. The engine house, which is a replica of English structures of the period, commemorates the Cornish heritage of the Castlemaine area. Once a booming gold mining town, Friarstown's population is now only in the hundreds. The courthouse, built in 1880, had no jail, so offenders were just tied to trees. George Levi Carter arrived in 1853 and set up a boot factory and house. A little further on we saw a sidetrack and a sign to Irishtown. This looked interesting, so we bounced on in to see what we could find. What we found were some crumbling ruins, obviously not up to the same standard as the Cornish stonework.
Looks like clay. I reckon it's just clay, because clay goes hard when it dries, pretty hard anyway, sticks it together.
In the 1860s, Guildford had the biggest congregation of Chinese miners in Victoria, with 3,000 to 6,000 men at their camp. We had heard about the big tree at Guildford, and that's what we had come to see. It is believed to be the largest river red gum in Victoria. It has a height of 25 to 30 metres and is believed to be over 500 years old. It is said that Burke and Wills camped under the tree on their expedition to the Gulf of Carpentaria. Also, there is a bust of Australian Football League legend Ron Barassi, who spent his early years here before moving to Melbourne to start his grade football career. Creswick was named after Charles, Henry and John Creswick, who were sheep squatters in 1842. Gold was found in Creswick in 1851, followed by a great rush in 1852 and another in 1856. The mines brought wealth to the town, leading to the construction of ornate public buildings. The not-so-ornate 1850s Gold Office was built in bluestone and includes iron window shutters. The lock-up behind the old courthouse is of similar construction. The Magic Pudding Playground is based on Norman Lindsay's book The Magic Pudding. We were now heading for Clunes, but travelling by the small town of Smeaton. Located on the banks of Birches Creek is possibly the largest flour mill ever built in Victoria. The mill was established to meet the demand for food in the Goldfield towns and was one of the largest industrial enterprises in rural Victoria. Outbuildings include a bluestone office, stables, a granary, a residence and a blacksmith shop. The flour mill included a 23-metre brick chimney and a 25-ton water wheel. John Anderson, a millwright, came out from Scotland with his brothers James and William in the early 1850s. They built the mill in the early 1860s after making a fortune on the Goldfields. When wheat production shifted to the northwest, the mill was refitted for oatmeal production and continued to function until 1957. Moving on again, we saw the evidence of a huge mining operation, its engine house now in ruins. The rather crooked main street of Clunes was busy with tourists. Clunes, which is Gaelic for a pleasant place, has retained its Gold Era buildings, which are featured in films such as Mad Max, Ned Kelly and Bloom. Clunes is also Australia's only internationally recognised book town. A book town festival is held in May, which brings over 60 booksellers to the town. Other times of the year, there's still plenty to see. as quirky as it may be. And there are plenty of places to grab a meal. Driving around town, we came across the town hall, in the process of having a makeover. The 1872 building is actually a combined courthouse and town hall. It is now used for entertainment and functions. Our next port of call was the old South Clunes State School. It now displays thousands of bottles, among other things. In fact, there are over 6,000 in the collection. The display is set up like shop fronts in a small village. A gentleman named Stephen was soon on hand to explain the uses the bottles used to perform.
I said, well, pickles wasn't the yellow mush in those days. It was submerged vegetables in oil.
Oh, yes.
So they remove the veggies and that, give that to people or keep it themselves, eat it themselves, oil in that, back in the machines. Yeah.
There was even a hotel bar. Pity it wasn't operating.
See the bottle there? What do you think it is?
Don't know.
Looks like it's got something in it, has it?
It has.
A
yeah.
letter.
It's got a leather in it, yeah.
I'll give that one.
What gives it away is, see in the top of it, the green, copper sulfate. That's a homemade battery.
Oh, good.
Okay, that ladder in there is lead. Parts of the rails on the ladder, lead and all that. There's a wire that comes out of the top, about so long, and it comes out, joins up at the top, and then you fit a light globe on top. So you have, the light globe will glow all the time with the battery going. They used to use them in chook sheds to make the chooks lay 2 eggs a day. Yeah.
Stephen took us through the process and hazards of producing soft drinks at the turn of the 20th century.
We'll start off with the mixer. The mixer is where you put blocks of lime in and it paddles in water and it forms a gas. The gas comes off it and goes to the converter, then it goes on to that guy there, the pressure unit.
We had spent more time in Clunes than we would have imagined, but we had one more place to go before heading back to Daylesford. Up on a hill overlooking the town there was a plaque that claims that the first gold discovered in Victoria was at Clunes. The tourist attraction at Shepherd's Flat near Hepburn Springs is Cricket Willow. Visitors can see a cricket bat being made. The history of the Crockett brand of bat goes back to the early 1900s. Sailors' Falls was barely a trickle when we called by on our way to Ballarat. And yes, it has a connection to gold. Sailors Creek was one of the early alluvial goldfields in Daylesford area, and was first worked by two sailors, John Lancy and James Ballantyne. Ballarat is a handsome town with its impressive buildings and monuments reflective of the wealth gained by gold mining. Gold was first found here again in 1851. A gold rush followed, with around 20,000 diggers arriving. Ballarat's prosperity, unlike that of many other gold boom towns, continued until the late 19th century, as the city's fields experienced sustained high gold yields for many decades. It has endured as a major regional centre and is the commercial capital of the Central Highlands, as well as a significant tourist destination. Ballarat's Begonia Festival is held in March and can attract more than 10,000 people. The Scottish hero William Wallace overlooks the gardens and the statuary pavilion, which houses imported marble statues from Italy. The Australian poet and horseman Adam Lindsay Gordon once lived in the cottage, which was relocated from near the town centre. The gardens also feature a number of giant redwoods, as well as a floral clock. Another feature of Ballarat is Lake Wendouree, which offers a wide range of attractions and recreational activities. Ballarat's first white settler was William Newell. It is believed that he asked an Aboriginal woman the name of the then swamp. She replied Wendouree, which means go away. The battle at Eureka Stockade on the 3rd of December 1854 has been described as a defining moment in Australia's history. Miners who were rebelling against the mining tax, corruption and miscarriage of justice were attacked without warning by a superior government force. The stockade has been called the birthplace of Australian democracy.